Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I want to welcome you to the January Beyond the Writing Academy virtual event, Fan Fiction, the People's Genre. This panel is sponsored by Flashpoint Publications. Flashpoint Publications is currently open for submissions from writers of every color and books featuring characters of every color. We believe that everyone is entitled to a seat at our rainbow table. Thank you again so much to Flashpoint for sponsoring this panel. So let's get started. I'm going to hand it over to moderator Virginia Black, and we hope that you all enjoyed this event.
All right, sounds great. Hello, I am Virginia Black. I'm your moderator today for Fan Fiction, the People's Genre. And believe me when I tell you, we are going to jump right in, talk way too much over each other, and generally have a fantastic time. Thanks for coming. I know that your time is at a premium, particularly on a Saturday across who knows how many time zones. So thanks for joining us today. All right, I'm going to introduce folks one at a time. First up, we've got Nikki Little. Nikki writes as, I believe it's Alumini, although you can correct me. With 20 fics in a relatively new fandom, The Haunting of Bly Manor. Nikki's also the one most likely to get every last one of my nerd jokes. So welcome, Nikki. Next, we have Patrice James, the most well-read, well-versed, and ardent fic advocate I've ever met. Having you here is an absolute treat. We have, give everybody a wave. All right, awesome. We have Milena McKay, who writes as McKay undercover in the Devil Wears Prada fandom, and is also one of the most read authors in 2022. Shout out to the headmistress and all hail Magdalene F. and Knox. Please forgive me for not using her correct name, but we're trying to keep things kind of PG-13. We'll see how long it lasts. Cannot wait for your next novel, by the way, though I'm supposed to be working on my own.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, great. We have, let's see, next up is Gemma McErlean. Gemma writes as Mems the Word with nearly 36 fics to her credit, including one 124,000 word Batwoman epic I cannot wait to get into. Gemma, are you there?
Yes, hello.
Awesome. Last but certainly not least, we have Roslyn Sinclair, who writes as, I believe it's Telanu. Is that accurate?
Telanu.
See, that's why I check these things, and I missed one. Though y'all are mostly familiar, y'all are mostly familiar with her Devil Wears Prada work, but she has also posted fics across such disparate fandoms as Charlie and the Chocolate Factory and James Bond. And let's see, also recently published 2 amazing novels, which have been keeping us all very busy. I want to say Truth and Measure, but what are both titles? Because I keep forgetting the second one.
Above All Things.
Thank you. Last but not least, I'm your host, Virginia Black, writing as Virginia Black 517, with a few fics in the Lost Girl fandom, as well as Supergirl, because I cannot leave Lena Luthor alone. My first original novel, Consecrated Ground, will be out in just a few short weeks. So some folks are joining via audio because of internet and all kinds of across the pond reasons, and some folks are doing video, but we are all here and eager to jump in. Let me tell you a little bit about the blurb. From Supergirl to Black Widow to Sappho herself, fan fiction is an art form all to itself. Many beloved authors started writing their writing careers with fan fiction, as you know. The inspiration that comes from the love of characters other writers have created is a testimony to the deep connection readers and viewers of all types of media have with the creators. So before I jump in, I want to say that there are some questions we will not be covering today. These are the questions that generally happen when you're at a fan fiction panel. 1, what's fan fiction? Not doing it. 2, how did it start? Don't care. 3, is it real writing? Considering how much time we all spend editing, I don't even want to look at that question. And what does it actually mean for the sapphic lesbian WLW fiction community? It means a lot. I don't want to waste any time there. Why not? Because we have the opportunity here to talk to the true believers, the staunch supporters, the avid contributors, to the genre that we, the readers and writers, define. So here are a few level setting questions for our panelists. So if you could open up your audio and please respond "I" to the following questions. Sure. If you've ever lost sleep because of a fic you had to stay up and finish because you couldn't put it down, say "I."
I.
If you've ever dropped
38 hours because of us.
If you've ever dropped everything during business hours to clandestinely read a much-awaited, recently posted update, say "I."
I plead the fifth.
If you've ever had an argument about whether Gabrielle would have been better off with Ethany, say "I." No, it's just me. Okay. If you've ever digressed a conversation because you needed to stress that Aragorn is in fact much prettier than Legolas, say "I."
No.
No, but I would have.
Yes. If you've ever watched the gird your loins scene more times than you can count because you swoon a bit when Miranda Priestley removes her sunglasses, say "I."
Oh God, yeah.
Oh, yes.
If you've ever read a comfort fic more than 5 times, say "I." If you would be hard-pressed to ballpark the number of fanfics you've read in your lifetime, and we're talking in the hundreds here, say "I." All right. So let's get into the nitty-gritty now that we've done the level setting. What drew you to fan fiction and what compelled you to write it? Let's start with Gemma.
Yeah.
All right, we got a little lag. What drew you to fan fiction and what compelled you to write it?
I think probably wanting more of something. So, I don't know, like I went to school in the UK during Section 28, which was when like homosexuality wasn't allowed to be discussed in the classroom. And there wasn't very much media around it that we had access to as kids. And I think the first time I was drawn to write fanfic was when Buffy came out, which was like my teen years. I never shared anything that I wrote then, but I did write for Buffy. And then following that, it was relationships that showed like positive sapphic relationships that I wanted more of, that I wanted to see the unseen moments of, and little moments that I wanted to alter for my preferences as well. And I think reading fanfic, same answers, to be honest, is just, finding that kind of positive representation and seeing things expanded upon that weren't necessarily done on screen.
Awesome. All right. Shout out to the Buffy fic and the Buffy Faith pairing. Nikki, how about you? What drew you to fan fiction and what compelled you to get started?
Well, to reading fan fiction, I was a very late starter, and a writing fan fiction even later. A friend of mine was a huge fanfic reader, and I had read fanfic without realizing it through like published Xena fanfic, like the Shaken series by KG McGregor, which I had no idea was fanfic until I realized it. And then I was like, oh, okay, I get it. But so then she got me into randomly Rizzoli and Niles fiction, which I didn't really watch, but the fan fiction for is amazing. And the characters are so much better in it. And I was like, oh my God, you guys are so much better than the writers on the show. So I got really into that. And then I got really into Swan Queen, I think, because their dynamic was just popping. And the first thing that actually drew me to writing it wasn't until Bly Manor, which is my current obsession and hyperfixation. Shout out to Bly Camp and Bly family. So it was, I think, because it was the first representation of a really healthy, stable, normal lesbian relationship on screen. And like my wife was watching me watch it, and like my I was like this, like the whole second half of the series, and I love horror, so it was like my perfect scenario. And it was the first time when I joined the Discord, the Damie Discord, run by my friend Adri, and it was such a supportive environment, and it was the first relationship that I felt compelled, because I was like, I had things going through my head that I couldn't get out of them until I wrote them down, and that had never happened to me before. But that's about it.
Awesome. One tag note for the folks who don't know about Squan Queen, that's from Once Upon a Time.
Once Upon a Time.
Milena,
Fanfic's
how
much
about
better than
you?
the show.
Me. Well, it will surprise exactly nobody that Kate Blanchett started everything for me. And I, as Nikki, I'm kind of a late bloomer in fan fiction. So I watched Carol, and that was that. There's no going back. So 2016, 2017 was when I consumed the internet, discovered fan fiction, and it started with the Carol fandom, and then very naturally progressed towards just the sheer amazingness of the quality that is the Devil Wear Prada fandom. Shout out to Telena and a ton of other creators who used to live and still live in that fandom.
Awesome.
And what compelled to write, well, they did. Their artistry, their mastery of the craft. I read so much, and I had so many stories in my head. So thank you.
Awesome. All right, we're getting a little lag from you, Milena, so we're going to keep going. All right, I want to move on to another question. So we call fan fiction a sandbox, right? And I know that as someone who writes both original fiction and fan fiction, there's a lot that you can do in fan fiction that you can't do in regular fiction. Are there any experiments that you've ever run when you're writing your fiction? And if so, would you be willing to share them with us? Roslyn?
Yeah, absolutely. I do think that fan fiction gives so much more freedom to try new things in experimental fiction than, traditionally publishing things. And one story that I started, got a long way through, never actually ended up finishing, but it was composed entirely of drabbles. And for anyone who isn't familiar with the term, a drabble is a story that is exactly 100 words, no more, no less. And so I strung, by the end, I'm sure, it would have been hundreds of them, hundreds of drabbles, one after the other, to tell a story. I had so much fun. It was pretty well received. And life happened, and, I just kind of wound up not being able to finish it. But I remember it being incredibly challenging, structurally speaking, but really, really fun. And you're never going to be able to do that in terms of, published works. So yeah, that's the first thing that hopped to mind.
Nikki, how about you? Any experiments that you've ever run while writing?
Well, kind of, I've used fanfic to learn how to write. So kind of everything I've written has been a bit of an experiment. But I started by plotting everything, and then a friend of mine, because I'm a scientist, so I'm a very analytical brain. I go A, then B, then C, then D. And she was like, to break yourself out of that, why don't you try just like, you might have a general idea of where you're going and just kind of go with it. And I ended up writing something that took a lot longer, but I think that it kind of opened up something different in my head that I wasn't really expecting it to. So it helped me flesh out scenes better because I wasn't pushing to go towards something else. And you can also there's no copyright infringement, right? So you can steal things from everywhere. And I wrote a story that was like literally all my favorite stories growing up. I just had them go to every story, and it was a lot of fun. And you can't do that in published work, but you can do anything in fanfic.
Awesome. All right, I'm skipping around a bit. So Patrice, this is a question I actually wanted to ask you in particular. So which platforms do you prefer? So I guess I want to talk about the pros and cons of Wattpad versus fanfiction.net versus Archive of Our Own versus personal websites, if you actually read things that are stashed and hidden on people's websites, or who knows what else.
Okay, so for me, number one is AO3. I consider that to be like king or queen of fanfic, because you can go look for whatever your pairing trope is. So for example, there's a part of me that loves phone conversation fics. So, and it's not done like it's a back and forth, but it's just the whole story is them talking on the phone, and it's amazing. And so there's one on Jane and Jacqueline from the Bold Type. There's a Super Cat one, and on. And you can get that kind of specificity at AO3. I'll read fanfiction.net if, the story happens to be there, or it's a fandom that's so old. Like there's some designing women fics, but they're only on fanfiction.net. And I'm talking like 7 stories, that's it. So it's the definition of a rare pair. And you guys probably don't have to think too hard to know exactly who I'm talking about, though, in that fic, because that's what this world is, But anyway, so there's that. And then after I would go from there to like, I'd go to LiveJournal if I'm like jonesing for it. So for example, when Batwoman was brand new and there was like 8 or 10 stories and you read all of them maybe twice, you want to read something new. And you're like, when are they going to put something out? And the lot of you are lucky because you're writers. So if push comes to shove, you can decide to write something. I'm not a writer, I'm a reader. So I have to really go searching. And so I'd go to LiveJournal, and what most writers will do is they'll write a story or a little drabble or whatever, put it on LiveJournal first, hear what people have to say, and then they'll move it to AO3. So that's why I go to LiveJournal, to get the up to the minute. And then I'd go to Wattpad for certain things, but Wattpad is like really random. It's like it's not even just a rare pair. It's like a couple that only I see, that maybe 4 people on the planet think would be great together, and they write a fic and they put it on Wattpad. So yeah.
I think one of the things, and we don't have to do a deep dive into this, is just how huge fan fiction is. I think a lot of folks don't really grok that, and they still think it's like, fanfiction.net or not even they think it's limited to the fandom they're familiar with, or the few that they know of, and the few sites that they know of. But there are millions.
Virginia, I just thought of one more thing. So you said websites. So there's one author who literally took 2 fandoms that nobody would have ever put together in the world, and she started writing a series about these 2 characters from the fandom. One is Emily Prentice from Criminal Minds, and one is Emma Frost from X-Men. You would never put them together. And so what she did is, this whole series is on her website. And at first time I saw it, I thought, this is silly. Why would anybody think this works? I've probably read 15 out of her 25 stories. Like, it is excellent. And it's 2 worlds you would never put together. I can't even believe that she thought that up. It's brilliant.
Patrice, we're just you really do need to put together a website where you just like put all this stuff. Every time I talk to you, I get something new. Let me touch on this. While I don't want to talk about the value that fanfic has for our community, Milena, have you ever truly felt the rumored stigma of reading or writing fan fiction?
I want to say no, but then I don't encounter a lot of people as an introvert. But in all honesty, I've never been dinged for reading it. In fact, if I do, in my hyperfixation on certain fandoms, if I do talk to people about it, they seem to be, if not receptive, then at least respectful. And I think I've gotten dinged a few times in reviews for, this book, it reads like fan fiction. But instead of getting offended by it, I took it very much as a compliment, because some of my favorite authors are fan fiction authors. So I was like, yes, achievement unlocked.
Nice. Okay, I'm going to take one from the question and answer pool, which ties into a question that I've got. And this one is for Gemma. My question is, how important is it for you to integrate canon? And from the Q&A, do you prefer to write AUs or within the canon? Do you feel like it feel different to write one style versus the other?
I think it's dependent on the story. Like, you don't, like, I want to be respectful to the characters and to what they mean to fans, particularly writing for the Batwoman fandom, because Wildmore was such a huge deal to so many people. So you want to be respectful. But at the same time, there are certain elements of canon that are overused a little bit, can get a little bit samey. For example, like random one is that in fanfics, Ryan literally only eats sweet potato pancakes because it was written in the show once, and now everybody just jumps on it. So you'd think that Ryan had no other diet. So I think the little things like that, like, I'm happy to go off and write different things, but I think for the larger elements, I like to stick to canon. I've read some where Sophie is not written as lesbian, which is so paramount to her character, so important to her storyline in the show, that I don't like. I wasn't a fan of them going off canon there. AUs, I used to not like them, and then I got involved in Wildmore Week last year and hosted the opener of an AU that was never supposed to be along the story, and kind of got hounded into writing it, which is the 120-something thousand word multi-chapter that currently exists under my name. So I am now a fan of AUs, definitely.
Awesome. Just a brief pause. I am seeing a few notes that whenever we use a term that folks don't grok, other folks in the chat are picking up the slack and explaining. I promise that everyone will get everyone's handles, everyone's websites at some point. We'll figure out how we're going to do that. I don't know if that's going to come up in the summary after this or if we'll drop it in chat towards the end, but I promise everyone will get a chance to dig up everyone's work. Roslyn, back to you on the integrating canon versus AU. How big of a deal is it for you? Anything
goes. If a story occurs to me, and a lot of times it just sort of seems like, a lightning bolt hitting you out of the blue, I'm going to write it. Like The Lily and the Crown is The Devil Wears Prada in outer space. And that's one of the most fun stories I've ever had. And sometimes if the canon is particularly enriching all by itself, I don't really feel the need to kind of venture outwards, or I want to explore within the world of the canon and kind of push the boundaries there. So really, I will read it all, I'll write it all, I'll have fun with it all. What's really important to me is kind of like what Gemma said, staying true to the characters themselves, like identifying for myself what I feel is most essential in the character and making sure that that transports to whatever environment I throw them into.
How about you, Milena?
Well, some of the fandoms that I particularly enjoy, Canon has done such a number on that fanfic had to come in and fix everything. Warehouse 13 or Swan Queen, where we got slapped in the face so many times. Fandom fixed everything, and so in those cases, AUs are, like a refuge from the horrible canon, or in fandoms where one of the main characters dies. I will never, ever forgive the writers of Klexa. So, the AU comes in and heals everything and puts them in a different dimension where none of the canon can ruin it. But as Roslyn said, if the story is good, I'll read everything. And, so many of them just live happily ever after in my Kindle. So.
How about you, Nikki?
Well, I started writing, my first ever thing was canon, like a character exploration of Jamie from Bly Manor. And I really liked that. And I love the canon of the universe of Bly. But the thing is that I found that a lot of readers have very different ideas about what can't be changed in canon. So, and you can't really write to that. Like all you can do is really kind of decide what the characteristics are that you find are important to the characters and then kind of expand upon that. But I find the most fun writing AUs. I love reading and writing both canon and AUs of anything. But for writing, I really like if you know a character very well and if you understand their mechanizations and how they got to where they are today, I really like thinking about like, okay, but what if they didn't have this backstory? What if it was tweaked this way? What if they were living in this world? What if they had these parents? What if they had this redemption? And what if they did this? And I really like putting them in that scenario and seeing the kind of person that they would turn it into that way. So that's my favorite thing to write.
I just want you all to know.
Virginia, may I add?
Yes.
May I add that in some fandoms, certain stories, certain fanfics become so influential, so well loved, so universally adored that they actually become canon. And yes, I will always speak about this fandom and this fanfiction because in Devil Wears Prada, Teleno's Truth and Measure is canon. So many other authors have based their stories on the backstories of the characters from Truth and Measure. We take it exactly as Roslyn wrote it instead of, what actually happens in the movie or in the book itself.
All right. So we're getting a ton of questions in here, which is, this is awesome. I'm really psyched about how folks are engaging. Let me take one and then we're going to jump to a quick lightning round. So much to choose from. Okay, here's a fun one. This is from L. Iyer, author of Harsh Reality, which you should all go read. Do you generally prefer to write within one fandom, or do you regularly have characters from different fandoms visiting and interacting with each other?
I'm one fandom for me, one at a time.
I'm a bit of a serial monogamist as well.
Yeah, I think
I have dipped a bit back into Swan King every once in a while.
Yeah, I think I've written a couple of crossover fics, but they were usually like presents for friends or kind of quick one-offs. I tend to be like Nikki said, I think serial monogamist describes it perfectly for me.
Even with me in reading, it's the same. After Devil Wears Prada came out, I literally read no other fandom for 2 years. It was just them. And so right now I'm in a zone with Batwoman fandom. So I'm reading those kinds of fanfics and that's it. Yeah, Gemma knows.
Okay, I think I'm the only heathen because I'm currently writing a story where I've thrown Sophie Moore into the mix, and Kara sleeps with Sophie before she sleeps with Lena. Just saying, just throwing some spoilers out for everybody. Not supposed to talk about myself. I'm the moderator. Gemma, you got any 2 cents on that? Oh no, you said just all Batwoman.
All Batwoman. I'm very much against Sophie with anybody else, unless it's me.
There.
But continue.
All right, it's time for a lightning round. Tropes, love them or hate them. So from the top, give me a trope that you love and a trope that you hate. Milena, you're up.
I said I wouldn't hug Ice Queen. I said Roslyn can have her, but I changed my mind. Age gaps are the tropes that I enjoy, and friends to lovers is something that I don't find particularly to be my speed.
Awesome. Roslyn?
I will say that the trope I will always fall hard for is there was only one bed. Every time it's like, oh my God, what's going to happen? There's only one bed. So, that's bulletproof for me, along with, anything related to power dynamics. Like Melina, I will say friends to lovers, other than say, for example, I loved Grace and Frankie, but again, even then they started out as enemies. So I guess kind of the warm and fuzzy friends to lovers stuff has never been my thing personally, although of course I understand why so many people would find something like that appealing.
Patrice?
I love age gap as well. And I like the fake relationship to real relationship. I eat that up with a spoon. Like, it's one of my favorite things because and to me, what I love about it is how it reminds me of romance in general, which is that you come into it knowing how it's going to end. So really the magic, the big beats. So the magic now is to see how the writer is going to hit you with the little details to make this one particular story different than all the others where they start a fake relationship and end up married or forever together in the end or whatever. So it's one of my favorites. And you know what's funny? Now that Roslyn and Milena say this, I tend to agree with them. I don't think I really love gooey friends turned to lover because I guess to me, it doesn't feel real, for lack of a better term. Like in real life, my friends, some people are not like this, but for me, my friends, people I'm dating are people I'm dating, and they're very different. So.
Thanks. How about you, Gemma?
Patrice is constantly trying to set up her friends, but I think that's a completely separate story.
Interesting.
Yeah.
We're not here to talk about me.
No. Really,
Okay.
Patrice? I'm going to agree with everybody else. I'm not a massive fan of friends to lovers, but I do love enemies to lovers because I love the bickering and the banter and the tension. And yeah, I'd say that's probably one of my favorite ones. I would go for that every time.
Anything you hate?
I can't think of any I hate. I hate when they're badly done, like when
I
they're
do hate that.
overly predictable and when they're reliant on it being a trope as opposed to actually writing it as a developing story, I think. But I can't think of any that I hate. The bury your gays trope, hate. That just came up. Yeah, Plexer.
Fair. Nikki?
Friends to lovers is my favorite.
Naysayer.
It's my favorite. It's how me and my wife got together. We were best friends and roommates, and we fell in love. And there's something about it that is like assumed non-returned love is my favorite angst, where you have this pining that just keeps going and you think that the other person just is never going to fall for you because it's never going to work. Oh, that's my favorite heartbreak. I love pining. And I know. And my other favorite is fake relationships. I love that shit. And if it can be fake relationships with friends to lovers, forever, my love. But my least favorite, anything non-consensual whatsoever, I am no thank you.
No thanks.
No thank you. I do not consent to non-consensual.
No thank you. For the record, I read just about anything, and I love some angst. I love some angst. But love triangles piss me off. I'm like, ugh, I don't have time for you. Okay, let's see. Ooh, okay, I'm gonna throw this out here just because I love to start shit. Would you ever write a story that doesn't have a happy ever after ending, or have you already written one? Gemma?
Yes. Sorry.
I think an original story, maybe, yeah. Probably not fanfic, especially not in the fandom that I currently write in, Batwoman, because they deserve a happy ending, and I'm not going to take that away from anyone.
That's fair. All right, Nikki, you're bursting. Give it to us.
I'm bursting. Well, I mean, spoiler alert for Bly Manor, it doesn't end well. But some people like to pretend that that didn't happen. But I love the pain of that. Like, I love getting my heart broken. I love feeling every emotion very strongly. So whenever something can make me extremely sad after being extremely happy, or vice versa, that's the best. But yeah, I have written major character death because the major character dies in mine. And I think that there's something really beautiful about that kind of devastation. But I also don't write, if you're doing a strictly romance story where the whole point of romance is happily ever after, but if you're writing a not romance story where it's about something else, then yeah, absolutely.
I'm not supposed to answer my own questions, but I did mess around with this with a crossover that did not have an HEA, and it was still reasonably well received, but it was a fight with myself because I had to give in to canon. Nikki, you just made it to my list of potential betas when I have a non-HEA, so I know it'll get a fair shake. Rosalind, how about you?
Oh, same as Nikki. Like, I've killed them off. I've broken them up. Like, I've had them, misunderstand each other and never get together. The majority of my stories are HEA, or at least, HFN, happy for now, because that's what I find satisfying. And I, originally started writing fan fiction to get characters together and make them kiss, and it was happy. But yeah, I would say for a romance novel, absolutely not HEA, obviously, every time. That's the contract, right, between an author and a reader, and you don't want to break that. But for fan fiction, again, like what I keep coming back to again and again is kind of the flexibility and the freedom, and that's part of that. I do believe in warnings for things like major character death, or, if there's anything particularly dark or whatever, like if there's going to be some kind of graphic depiction of physical suffering, assault or whatever, and I believe very strongly that you want to give people a heads up about that. But yeah, fan fiction lets you go other places.
So I'm going to skip a bit because I want to make sure that we get to a couple of these questions, mostly because I'm desperate to know all of your answers. When you're writing, does your process change when you're writing one-shots or novellas or longer stories? The way that you approach writing that particular story? Let's start with Milena.
I'd say that the process itself doesn't necessarily change, but I'm a plotter. I'm somebody who sits down and plots and plots and plots a lot. So that part may change. One-shots or smaller stories, a lot less of me sitting down and plotting will take place, versus if it's a longer story, then yeah, everything has to have a separate spreadsheet, everything has to have a separate Scrivener character sheet, etc.
Nikki?
Sorry, I'm on cold brain. Can you repeat the question?
Does your process change if you're doing?
Okay, yeah, no, I remember now.
Okay,
it came back. Okay, so I've kind of played around with process a lot because I'm kind of learning how what I need to write works for me, depending on what I'm doing. I've found that with one-shots, I've been doing a ton of like short story and 1K or less writing competitions and that kind of stuff, and it really helps you kind of really drill down to like the bare minimum of what you need and to do quickly and to be a fully fleshed story in that way. So I tend to, for those, I kind of think through it and kind of do a mental picture of where I project it going, and I don't really sit down and plot it out. I might make a couple of notes, but then I just kind of run for it. For longer stories, I'll think up stuff while I'm writing one chapter, and then I'll make a Word doc and, add this stuff. Oh, don't forget to add this. Oh, I want to add this. I want to add this later. It's turned into much more of that process than a full-on plotting from the start. But I've found that since I'm writing like a dystopian fantasy right now, like that has needed a lot more world building. So I have needed to go back to my analytical brain a bit and let that out of the gate and make maps and figure out, exactly where they're going to go, how long they're going to be there. So I've had to do a lot more on that.
How about you, Gemma?
Initially, I didn't think I had multi-chapters in me. I didn't think I had the discipline to do it or the kind of organization. So I was like exclusively one-shots, which tended to just bounce into my brain based on a single sentence of dialogue or something really simple. And then I got kind of pushed to write the multi-chapter. And that's all I've done since. And it's definitely messier. Like I'm looking around now and I can see multiple notebooks that are dotted around my lounge. And like multiple plans, and very much like Nikki said, I tend to be writing one and I'll have to open multiple other documents to put notes in, or don't forget this and don't forget that. So yeah, it's definitely messier doing multi-chapters than it is one-shots.
Roslyn, you've got a couple of one-shots out, right?
Mean fanfic?
Yeah.
One-shot? Oh gosh. So I will say that I've been writing fan fiction for probably over 20 years. So I put stories of all kinds out there. I will say the longest works that I've ever posted, I've never started a fanfic project thinking it was going to be long. Ever. If I had had any idea how long Truth and Measure was going to be, I would not have started it. I legit thought it was going to be this funny little one shot with the crazy idea of Miranda Priestley getting pregnant. So Milena referred to herself as a plotter. I'm what you call a pantser, writing by the seat of your pants, where I kind of go into it with an idea and I'm like, let's see what happens next. And so my longest projects have always sort of let's see what happens next themselves all the way into hundreds of thousands of words. Now as a published author who knows that I'm actually writing things that are supposed to be novel length, I do approach it very differently.
All right, I'm going to take one from the Q&A pile here. How often do you keep unfinished works in progress to yourself? What makes you decide that they won't see the light of day? Let's go with Gemma.
Yeah, I have multiple things that I have either completed or started, and I wouldn't say I've necessarily decided they're not going to see the light of day. I even forget about them, or they're just not ready yet, I think. But I have got multiple on my laptop.
Roslyn?
So I have posted to AO3 several works that I've clearly marked, hey, these aren't going to be finished. I try and go in and fill in stuff with some notes about this is what would have happened or whatever. But I always clearly mark this isn't going to be done. I don't know. Maybe I just love the attention. I don't know. Or I think that the story idea has promise and I do want to share it. But for every one of those, there are probably 20 unfinished stories in Google Drive, or just drafts or ideas or whatever, where I'm just like, no, I'm going to keep this one for myself.
How about you, Nikki?
I think the only ones that I have that are just sitting in a drive somewhere are probably Swan Queen fics from when I started them, when I wasn't writing fanfic and I was kind of scared to put it out there because I'd never done it before. I think they're still in there, and everything else I'm just I wrote it. The good thing about fanfic is it doesn't have to be good. You just do it. Somebody will like it. Probably. And that's fine.
Melina?
That's the best part of fanfic. It's the least, it feels like a lot of pressure because you're still creating something that came out of your brain. It's like your baby and you're putting it out into the world. But also you're just what? It's made up. Who cares? Just put it out there. So I'll probably go back to the Swan Queen ones and brush them up since I have learned to write better now, I think. So I'll probably go back and see if they suck and then rewrite them and put them out there. Why not?
How about you?
But I tend to do chapter by chapter because why not? Sorry.
No worries.
Well, I've been burned. I've been burned so many times with multi-chapter fics that have not been finished. Now I've made this kind of promise to myself, like I swore an oath never to begin reading a multi-chapter until it's finished. And I have already broken said oath several times. But like, with reliable authors, like authors, that update like once a week or twice a month or something. And you cross absolutely everything that nothing happens to these people, whatever they are on the planet, and that the fic is finished. As callous as it is, they have lives and they have families, and all you do, is want them to finish their work. But because I've been so burned, I've only published mine once they were either almost finished or finished entirely. And I actually don't have any stories in, hidden away somewhere. I started writing fiction instead of fan fiction. I sort of made the jump. And from there, it's either write a book or write fanfic. Unfortunately, I can't find the time to do both. I admire very much the authors who continue to write fan fiction after starting publishing.
This one is for Patrice. So I know what a voracious reader you are. What do you get reading fan fiction that you don't get reading original fiction? And what do you get reading original fiction that you don't get from reading fan fiction?
So
in 4 minutes or less. No, I'm kidding.
Got jokes. But in fan fiction, so it's kind of, fan fiction to me is similar to why I read romance in general, which is you go in wanting to, like, there's an itch you want to get scratched. You know what I mean? Like you want and I mean this like the romance of it, the joy of it, the happiness, things that to me, real life can be sucky. So in my fiction, I'm very big on, I like a happily ever after, not Hallmark level, but I like knowing those things. And what's great about fan fiction versus regular fiction is when you go into fan fiction, you already know and love the characters. So the writer, to be honest with you, I mean, I'm not a writer, so you writers might disagree with me, but to me as a writer, you're starting off not at zero. You're starting off at a place of like, oh, whoever's coming to read this, they're already a fan of these characters. So I just have to not, just sort of land the plane, basically. It's already in the air, that kind of thing. And so to me, that's one of the best feelings and that's why when I read something, some people will, I think Milena or Roslyn said that sometimes people will write reviews and say stuff like, oh, this reads like fan fiction. No, when I'm reading original sapphic fic, and I can tell that it started as fan fiction, I can tell it started as Swan Queen or Super Cat or Devil Wears Prada. I love it. I love it more. Now I feel like, okay, I love these characters. This is amazing. I already know them. They're my friends. They just look a little bit different. And so that to me is really important. When I'm reading original fiction, it's more of a hurdle for the writer to jump with me, because the writer may love this one character, their main character or whoever, but I might not. There might be something about the way that character's living their life that is not my favorite, So I just have to kind of go through the motions until I get to a place where I love the character. And that may take 2 chapters. It may take 10 chapters. So yeah, I love fanfic. I love fanfic more than I do published works, actually. But the best thing about our genre, our world of sapphic literature, is that a lot of it start as fanfic and then become published. So it ends up with me getting the best of both worlds. But with regular fiction, sorry?
I said awesome.
Yeah, for sure.
Roslyn, what can you do in fanfic that you can't do in original fic and vice versa?
Well, in fan fiction, like we've already talked about, how there's a little more room to play with less than happily ever after outcomes, or play around with form, try stuff like that. I will say what original fiction gives me the chance to do is kind of like what Patrice was talking about, which is where you take a character and build it from the ground up and all of the risks associated with that. I know that the last 4 novels I've published were based on fan fiction, so that doesn't quite apply. But now I'm doing original work, and I have published other novels under a different pseudonym that were totally original work. And even the X ingredient, I wound up probably rewriting like 95% so that the characters are really very different from the characters in the fan fiction. And there's something both rewarding and risky about that, which is where you really feel like you're getting to know somebody new. And you're sort of holding their hand and walking along with them and seeing kind of what they make of themselves and the person that they become. But the other risk is that, the audience is not necessarily going to like that. They're not going to be into it. And some of them really will be. But that's what I would say is just the building of characters, which for me is at the heart of any story.
Milena? What can you do in
Risky part.
Whoa, go ahead.
I want to say that other than perfectly agreeing with Roslyn on the fact that the characters are at the heart of everything, and that's sort of where you start from, both in original fiction and in fan fiction. And, you do it for the love of the characters. Miranda Priestley has such a chokehold on this community. You do it for the love of Miranda Priestley, for lack of better metaphor. I honestly don't know what I do in fan fiction that I wouldn't do in original fiction. Since I would never kill off a character in either, because I'm such a huge believer in a happy ending, I don't know. You stumped me.
One of the reasons why I put this on this list is I'm interested in other people's answers, because I could talk about this one for about 4 hours. And there's a couple of things, and I'm not going to touch on them long because, again, I'm the moderator. I'm not supposed to be answering questions. Is length. I have read 300, 400,000 or million-word epics where I've gone along for the whole ride, which no editor anywhere would allow to be published. I mean, there's just no way. And I'm thinking specifically of works by like Lost Ariels, who writes in the Supergirl fandom, who writes these long epics, or one-shots. Where else are you going to get your one-shots done? There are things that or novellas, although novellas have experienced a resurgence in the last few years.
In self-publishing.
Yeah.
In self-publishing.
Oh, that's a good point.
Maybe that is why I have this sort of attitude that there isn't much that I wouldn't do, because I'm a self-published author, and I have a certain freedom that self-publishing allows me to, if I want to do so much angst, I can do all the angst. If I want to do, exactly. If I want to do something extremely, something that, say, a trope that is controversial or something. I'm the only one who has to suffer the consequences. I don't have to account for my choices other than with my readership. But you make the same choices in fact fiction too. When you become known as a certain author of fan fiction, your readership expects certain things from you. So here's where a little, the freedom comes for me as a self-publishing author.
For Nikki and Gemma, Nikki first, any plans to publish original fiction?
Yes, I've mentioned I've been doing more like writing competitions, and one of them was to write a prologue for an epic fantasy. So I wrote a 6K prologue to a dystopian fantasy, and because it was such a big world that you kind of had, even though you were only writing the first chapter, you kind of had to like envision the entire thing to be able to know how everything fit together just for that chapter. So I haven't really stopped thinking about it since then. So, and that's an original piece of work. So for NaNoWriMo this year, I wrote 50K on that, and I'm going to turn that into a published novel. I'm hoping to finish it by my birthday in March. We'll see.
We'll pull for you.
Thank
And
you.
also, congratulations on your 50K. Gemma, how about you?
And congratulations on yours.
Thank you. Gemma?
I am currently reworking one of my fanfics, one of the multi-chapter fanfic, hopefully for publication. And yes, I do have other stories, but none that are as ready, I'd say.
So I really hate to do this, but we have to wrap up. Obviously, we could probably go for another hour, and I'm kind of bummed out that we're not. So I want to take a moment to ask each of you. We're going to summarize where folks can find you. So everyone who is registered, you will receive, and Finn and GCLS, absolutely correct me if I'm wrong, everyone will receive a summary that includes everyone's handles. And I actually want to give, I'll be dropping a link for folks, just for folks who are attending today. I'm actually going to be including a link to the first 2 chapters of my novel, which everyone else won't see for 3 more weeks. But let's go around the room and let folks know what's coming up that you want to share with folks about. So Roslyn, why don't we start with you?
All right, sure. So in April, that's currently the scheduled date, my publisher Ilva is going to publish an anthology called After Happily Ever After. It's actually the second one they've done of this type that shows stories from different Ilva authors that are set after one of their novels ends. So I will have a short story in there featuring Jules and Jules and Vivian from the Carlisle series, and also little Felicity as well.
Brilliant. How about you, Milena?
I have a new book coming out on January 31st. It's called These 10 Lines. And it's a story about, well, lines that should never be crossed and what happens after they are. It's a slight departure for me as it does not have an ice queen, but it is an age gap.
Adding it to the list. Patrice, what's coming up that you're psyched about besides hanging out with me in June in Denver?
Sure. I'm trying to think of what I could say. Well, so for me, I'm not a writer, I'm a reader. But I have a Twitter and I'm Darnikita, DARNIKITA. I'm on private, so if somebody does want to follow me, just ask and I'll let you. I can't think of, so other than the conference, I mean, we have, like you said, Denver, we have a couple of panels. There's going to be some panels on fanfic. So if someone's interested, that's something you could take part in. And there's going to be, GCLS is having a day in March, I think in Jersey, where it's just going to be panels and stuff. It's going to be really fun. It's like an offshoot. So if anybody's interested, let me know. Get me on Twitter and I'll tell you more about it.
Awesome. Nikki, what do you got coming up besides hanging out with me in June?
Well, I would, but I'm going to be on a stupid family vacation. Sorry, family, if you're listening. I do want to go to that GCLS thing in Jersey, though. So, Patrice, let me know. While I'm working on that book, which I'll eventually finish, I hope, I'm still writing fanfic. So if you guys want to read Bly Manor fanfic, which I highly recommend, it has some of the best writers I've ever read in that fandom, and it's amazing. But it's also a nice little small community. But I'm usually on Discord, Alumini on Discord, and Alumini on AO3. That's ALOMINI. And that's about it. I'm on Facebook and whatever.
And whatever. Gemma, how about you?
Firstly, Patrice, I'm offended that you didn't say that you're coming to the UK in May to see me again. But
I should have said that. My bad.
Yeah, I was like pointing at myself. Yeah, no, I'm working on, reworking one of my fanfics, which hopefully I will submit for publication in the next couple of months, and still writing Batwoman fanfic, which I will hopefully continue to do forever, because it is an amazing fandom and they deserve more representation.
Agreed. Well, I want to thank all of you for devoting your time to join us today. I know you all are peppered throughout the world, so this has been really, really awesome. I really appreciate it. I, Virginia Black, and got some fanfic up here at these places under this name, and I'm at Twitter and that name, and Insta and that name, and you can find out more about my book and everything I'm doing at that address. That address. Again, for folks who are asking, we're going to send a summary out to everyone to register that will include everyone's handles and links to everyone's websites. Please support these amazing folks right here, these amazing authors. If you see Patrice, corner her and make her tell you what she is reading, because she will absolutely share that with you. I actually got a ton of stuff written down that I didn't know about, so I'm thrilled. I want to thank the Golden Crown Literary Society for giving us a place to sit and geek out today. I want to thank Flashpoint Publications for sponsoring the event. This has been a really good time. Everyone who joined us, thank you so much. Hit us up on Twitter if you have more questions. If they didn't get answered here, I will make sure that I get these folks to answer and get it back to you. I think that's it. So have a great day, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. This was great.
Bye, everyone. I really enjoyed it.
Bye, everyone.